You're on mute, Greta.
Thank you. We'll try that again. Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Board of Trustees, Billings Public Schools May regularly scheduled board meeting. I would like to invite you to join me in rising for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and you may be seated. And I will now do the roll call. And again, I know there are some folks that are joining us a little bit late, so we'll see if they make it on. Jana Hafer.
Present.
Thank you. Jen.
Present.
Hoffman. Thank you. Michael Leo.
Here.
Russ Hall.
Present.
Thank you. Scott McCullough.
Here.
Hi, Scott. Tanya Ludwig, I saw her.
Here.
Joe Raffiani. Has Joe made it on?
Here.
Thank you. And Brian is absent this evening and asked to be excused. So with that, our roll call is finished. And the first order of business on the agenda this evening is the reorganization of the board and the administering of oath to our clerk. So the first is the election of the chair of the board. And so I will hand the virtual gavel to Mr. Van Ice.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and open up the floor for nominations for board chair. Are there any nominations?
I'm going to nominate Greta.
Okay,
I second that.
Okay, are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? Okay, by acclamation, Greta Beschmoen will remain our board chair. Congratulations.
Thank you. And
Sorry.
Yes, Joe?
I was just apologizing for speaking over again. That's all.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Virtual life in the day and times. So that moves us on to the election of the vice chair. So I will ask for nominations from the floor.
I nominate Joe Raffiani.
A nomination for Joe Raffiani. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Are there any nominations from the floor? And for the third time, any nominations from the floor? Hearing none, by acclamation, Mr. Joe Raffiani continues as vice chair. Thank you. Glad to have you as my partner. That also, the next item of business then is the appointment of the clerk. And so I would entertain a motion to continue with the appointment of Mr. Craig Van Ice as our district clerk. Do I have a motion, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Jana Hafer.
I would be happy to make that motion to keep Mr. Van Ice as our clerk.
Thank you, Jan.
I will offer a second, Madam Chair.
And that second sounded like Mike Leo. Is that correct? Was that
Nodded.
Mike? Okay.
Yes, correct.
I'm not seeing my people. I'll try to do the gallery view again. All right. Second from Michael Leo. And is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Jana Hafer.
Aye.
Jen Hoffman.
Aye.
Joe Raffiani.
Aye.
Mike Leo.
Aye.
Russ Hall. Mr. Hall. You're
Aye.
for your button. Thank you. Scott McCullough.
Aye.
Thank you. Tanya Ludwig.
Aye.
And Brian, and the chair votes aye. So we now have the administration of oath of office, and I believe that Superintendent Upham will administer the oath of office to Mr. Van Ice.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, Mr. Van Ice, please repeat after me. Oath of the office. I do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Montana.
I do solemnly swear that I will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Montana.
And that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
and that I will discharge the duties of my office with fidelity.
Madam Chair, that's a completion of the oath of office.
Thank you. And thanks for your continued support of our district, Craig. We truly appreciate it, and the light that you have shown into our finances in addition to being our clerk. So that moves us to recognition and gifts and donations. This is always a fun time of year. Again, it's been changed a little bit because of of our virus. We have Golden Apple winners that we recognize every year, and I will pass that on to Superintendent Upham to share those names with us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And it's kind of a rebirth, I guess. That's what I'd like to share. We have been behind the 8 ball, it feels like, for a long time. I think anything prior to March 16th feels like maybe a couple of years ago or longer. And I'm really not exaggerating. It just really seems like a long time ago. This is a normal time of the year to close the year out and to celebrate. And I think it's time that we start to shift our minds into moving forward instead of behind the 8 ball. Do we have a lot of issues to consider? Yes, we do. But it's time to get going again. And it's really an exciting time to launch this. I want to thank Kathy Anderson and Lynn Jensen, the Golden Apple co-chairs, for their work, and the committee for their work on the Golden Apple. I was very, very impressed last year with the banquet and the tradition that goes with this. This is the recognition of the best of the best. And not only that, but we also have the BA Teacher of the Year tonight, and then also the BA Friend of Education. So permission for all of us to let go of what's happened and look for new beginnings, to really start out and get some excitement. And maybe we can see each other's teeth because we're smiling instead of wondering what's going to happen the next day. But it's time. It's time to start smiling and celebrating and moving forward. At this time, I want to recognize our Golden Apple winners and talk just collectively the caliber of professional that we are dealing with. These are the people that are over and above, that go beyond, that lead their peers in a lot of different directions, not to mention the success of our students. And what's really been gratifying as of late is the outpouring of support from our families with our teachers and administrators through this whole thing. I'm getting 1 to 2 emails a day just thanking the district for the quality of the professional that's out there. It is so heartwarming and so exciting to read it. So right now, this year's Golden Apple winners are Stacy Bird from Pauley Drive, Paula Simcox from McKinley, Shirley Green from Lewis and Clark, Alice Nation from Senior High, Natalie Miller from Beartooth, and one administrator, Kevin Croft from Bitterroot, excuse me. So those are our Golden Apple winners, and you can put little fun hands out. You can clap, you can smile. I should see everyone's teeth. I hope you brushed before the meeting. Very, very exciting. And now the BEA Teacher of the Year, and had the pleasure of going through the first consensus training with Noreen, and it was really good. We're going to miss her. A lot of years of service to SD2, and so unfortunate that we can't do this in person, but we will at some point in time. So this year's BEA Teacher of the Year, Noreen Burris. So again, let's see your hands, and let's see, and your teeth. And then the BEA Friend of Education, who was a previous board chair in Lewistown, but is very, very active in education, public education, outstanding individual. I had the opportunity to meet Marilyn, I think my second day in Billings when I became the superintendent, and I was out to lunch with, I don't remember who it was, but she came up to me and I think it was Brenda and Dave. And so Brenda introduced me to her, and she looked right at me and she said, "You've got some big shoes to fill, buddy." Welcome to Billings. So BEA Friend of Education, Marilyn Lawfrey. So Marilyn, thank you so much for all you've done for our district. So there you go again. So Madam Chair, just some really exciting news with our Golden Apples and our BEA Teacher of the Year and our BA Friend of Education.
Oh, thank you very much, Superintendent Upham. And I'd also like to thank Kevin Croft, who is retiring from Billings Public School. I'd like to thank him for his years of service and wish him the best as he embarks on a new career at Rocky. And have known Noreen over the years across the negotiation table, but got to know her a lot better during consensus building. And I really appreciated meeting the heart of Noreen that I had not met before. So that was a real heartwarming moment for me. And I wish her the best in her retirement as well. We also have donations. We always appreciate getting donations from our community. They continue to come in even as we are in our new normal. And so the suggested action is to recognize the people and groups as listed and accept these gifts and donations with gratitude. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Joe Raffiani and a second.
I'll second.
A second by Tanya Ludwig. Is there any further discussion or comments? If not, I will call roll call vote. Jana Hafer,
Aye.
Jen Hoffman,
Aye.
Joe Raffiani,
Aye.
Mike Leo,
Aye.
Russ Hall,
Aye.
Scott McCullough,
Aye.
Tanya Ludwig,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. Appreciate the support that we have of our community and appreciate the great work that we have with our staff across the district. That moves us on to communication from the public. This is where the communication from the public typically occurs during a face-to-face meeting. But in our new virtual world, the communication from the public we've been doing from at the end of the meeting, unless it's an item that is an action item. And there is a slightly different format, and I will read through the change in the format. Public comment for this evening's virtual meeting and for other meetings. Other virtual meetings can be submitted in electronic format using the Google Documents link provided on the district's webpage. When accessing the district's homepage or the school board page, a pop-up window will appear with a link to the Google document. Submissions do require a full name and home address in order to be submitted. We need that for the record, and they're limited to 500 word count. Submissions will be screened and read verbally by our district clerk prior to the conclusion of the meeting or at the time we would have an item that we are voting on. And as I look at the agenda, we have two sets of action items, two during the budget and one during policy. So unless it is pertaining to those specific agenda items, the comments from the public, the opinions of the public will be read at the conclusion of the meeting. Are we good with that, Craig?
Yes, Madam Chair, that works great.
All right, thank you very much. And then that moves us on to the approval of the agenda. And the board is asked to approve the agenda as presented. So I ask a motion to approve, please.
Madam Chair, I'll make that motion.
Jana Hafer, a motion and a second
From Russ.
by Russ Hall. Any further discussion? And we'll do our roll call vote. Jana,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Joe, Raffiani.
Aye.
Thank you. Russ,
Aye.
Scott,
Aye.
Tanya,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. So the agenda is approved as submitted. And with that, it moves us on to our superintendent's report. And he will give us an update on graduation. And Superintendent Upham has asked Mr. Felton to join as well to answer any questions. And then we'll have our COVID-19 report from our executive directors. This is part of the emergency plan that we have put in place, fulfilled some of those obligations. And then Greg is going to visit with us about the levy that was postponed in May and we're looking at a July date for that. So with that, I will send it off to Superintendent Upham.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, John Felton, for being a part of our meeting and being a friend to SD2 through this whole process. I invited John just if there are any questions with graduation, and just a quick reference. We obviously, as we all know, went through a roller coaster of a ride with graduation, and in the end, reached out to the scientists in conjunction with Mr. Felton with the county, and been very pleased with the organization of the process. And so, as a quick recap, this Sunday obviously will be graduation day with SD2, a little less than 1,200 graduates, 3 sessions. 9 a.m. will be Skyview High School. We extended the time between the graduations for disinfecting and cleaning ingress and egress in the management of social distancing. 2 p.m. is senior high, and then 7 p.m. is West High. There will be a screening protocol for everyone entering. That is the temperature taken and then the COVID questions. There is assigned seating for 2 guests only per graduate, and then the graduates are spaced on the floor at 6 feet apart. If there are additional students, which we saw in 2 of our high schools, West High and I believe Senior High, the seating went on all the way from the floor up into the lower level bleachers so that we could maintain that 6-foot distancing. So far, the planning has been great. I want to thank our community partners, Color 8 and SWX will do a live broadcast and a live feed for each session. And then also Q2 will do a live broadcast and a live feed on the CW. So we were excited to see those partners come in because we knew, we estimate that people who attend a graduation in Billings, Montana per session is right around 5,000 to 8,000 people. And so with 2 guests per graduate, that's a significant reduction. We've worked with the Metro as far as ingress and egress. I mentioned earlier the spacing of people coming in. Billings Clinic is offering to do the volunteering screening for us, the temperature screening. And that is all in play, and I'm pleased with that. And the placement of the students when they enter will go straight to their chairs. There won't be a march in so that we can maintain the social distancing and the safety pieces of that. And then the dismissal will be by row and by section so that we can control that. I think with the circumstances that we have and where we are, where we were, under the guidance and leadership of John and the county, and then Billings Clinic with their infectious disease team has been outstanding. So, John, is there anything else maybe you would want to share from your office or any questions from the trustees?
Yeah, thanks. I would just say that it really was quite a team effort to pull this off. This is not an event that's without risk, but I think we have mitigated as much of that risk as we reasonably can. One of the big challenges in an event of this size is if we have to do contact tracing, if heaven forbid there's cases that get linked. Metro folks came up with the idea of doing reserve seating. So we'll know where every person is sitting. We'll know where every student is sitting and who they're nearby. We'll know where every guest is sitting and who they're nearby. So I think there was a lot of work that was done to really maintain the distancing, to put contact tracing into place if we need to do that. Masking is being provided by Billings Clinic as well in school colors, which is kind of a cool deal. So I do think that everyone came together with the intent to figure out how we could get these students through graduation in a way that was safe and in a way that would reduce as much as possible the risk of infection. So it really was quite a team effort, and I'm glad that things have worked out as they have. The one thing I would say that we've seen that I'm hopeful we can keep a handle on is there's been some interest among some folks of, if you're not going to use your tickets, can I have them? That creates a significant challenge for us on the contact tracing side because we really do need to know where everyone is seated. So we're encouraging people not to give away their tickets or trade their tickets or sell their tickets. It's really important that we know where folks are. But overall, I think the response has been very positive. Again, I'd like to thank the superintendent, Billings Clinic, the folks at Metro, all really coming together with one objective to give these students their high school graduation. It will certainly be memorable. These will be the graduates of the pandemic year, and I'm sure they'll tell that story for many, many years. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of it.
Thank you, John.
Are there questions from the board for Mr. Felton? John, I have a question. How are the students and the parents notified of the process that they'll be going through? Or maybe that's to Greg instead of you.
Sure, I can take that. The building principals have sent letters home to each graduate as far as the protocols and procedures, and then we'll post on our website all the protocols and procedures. But the letter has been sent to the parents, I believe, last week or maybe a little bit before that.
Thank you. Are there other questions from the board? I thought I heard Jana.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Hayden.
Mr. Felton, this isn't really a question. I just wanted to thank you for stepping up and making it possible for our students to have this graduation. It won't be the same. It won't be as big. It'll definitely be memorable. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I've been pleased that the superintendent reached out just as soon as this got started, and we've known each other for a while, but he really has been very focused on doing as much as we can for our students and staff to maintain as much as we can in terms of the educational experience as well as keeping people safe. So I think that's been pretty emblematic of our community, even as we've gone through reopening. There's never been a loss of commitment to keeping people safe. And it makes me proud to be a part of this community that has worked so well together to get us through something that is truly unprecedented in our lifetimes.
Anyone else? And Mr. Felton, I would echo Jana's comments. I appreciate the teamwork that we have, the medical professionals, your position as health officer and our superintendent really taking to heart the medical needs as well as the mental health needs that we have of our students, their families, and our community. So thank you very much. Greg, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Fellow trustees, as we draw the year down, I thought it would be important for the executive directors to give a final report. Not a long report, because we've been able to take you on this journey by each area and department of support for our district. And there's just been some really neat stories that have come out of this, not to mention just the work in the classroom by our teachers. But one of the things that really sticks out to me is in a celebration was when we knew we were going to go into school closures. We didn't know when. We really didn't anticipate the governor closing the entire state. I thought that would fall to maybe John Felton and myself with trustee approval. That's what we were really prepared for. But write this one down for the history books, because we were serving food on day one. And I think that's extremely impressive. And I've said that about Sid Taylor and his team. But we thought that maybe it was going to take several days to just get up and running so that our students had food. But it wasn't. It was day one. They were passing out food. And now we're looking at kind of closing the year out in these areas. And I chose the executive directors for this meeting that are on the business side of our district, and then not next Tuesday, but the following Monday when we adjourn the Monday meeting, I'll have the other executive directors report out on the academic side. And so we just had some really neat things that have happened. And the first person I'm going to call on is Brandon Newford from technology. We scrambled and got over 5,000. I say we, I didn't, but they did. We scrambled and got 5,000 devices out. Can you imagine that? 5,000 devices went out, and then a helpline and online support, looking to help parents connect with the internet. And think about that. 5,000 devices or over that went out. So Brandon, just maybe a quick recap of your journey.
Good evening, Madam Chair and trustees, and thank you for having us today. My department has done an outstanding job supporting technology through the district. It's been a long road. I think the last 2 months feels like 6 months. We've been supporting technology in the schools remotely. As Greg says, we got a lot of the equipment out there. With the help of the schools, it wasn't just us, but with the help of the schools, we got a lot of equipment out to the homes, and have been doing very well supporting the equipment remotely, getting that equipment in, checking out new equipment when we couldn't fix it remotely. really since the last update, there's not a lot of changes. We've just been pushing hard to continue supporting everybody the best that we can. We have a plan in place to get equipment back starting May 26th throughout the schools. We're going to start getting that equipment back, and we've got a plan in place to make sure the equipment's quarantined and checked appropriately to make sure everything's coming back in one piece. So, we just continue to do our job, and that's to support the district.
Thanks, Brandon.
Yes.
Any questions for Brandon? Brandon, how do you, when I shouldn't say this out loud, but do you expect our devices to come back in one piece? I mean, what are you hearing?
Yeah, I expect a percentage to come back with, some damage that they hadn't gone out in. We're already getting responses from schools here and there, not a lot. Right now it's a pretty low percentage, but for the most part, the homes are reaching out to us and saying, hey, we've got a damaged Chromebook, this broke, this isn't working. So they're starting to come in slowly. I imagine as we start getting more in, we will see an increase to some of the damage out there. But so far, what we're hearing is fairly low.
Great.
Any other questions from the board? Brandon, I just want to thank you for your technological wizardry as you have allowed us to continue to meet, to stay connected through special meetings, to connect with our community, keep them up to speed on what we're doing, and it would not have happened without you at the helm. And I very much appreciate the expertise that you bring, the professionalism that you bring to our district. Thank you.
I reiterate that, Madam Chair. When I talked about, having the food delivered on day one, Brandon's office had us up and running with the first Zoom meeting right away. I mean, I know Jeff Weldon had shared with some of his clients that we had almost set the standard early, and not knowing where we were going or what we were doing. And Brandon, your leadership was outstanding in the communication. We never lost a blip. So thank you so much, and your staff. Just excellent work. Madam Chair, the next person, Craig Van Ice, we just spoke with him not too long, or just at the beginning here. And interesting out of his office was he was handling a $4 million deficit and looking to find out how to support that, not to mention negotiations when this all occurred. And then in a matter of seconds, was looking at individual employee contracts and all of the stuff that goes with that, not to mention the CARES Act funding and what that looks like. So a complete 180 from where we were. So Craig, maybe a quick synopsis of your area as we bring the year to a close.
Thank you, Greg. Similar to the technology department, the business office staff has been stepping up and continues to step up, just handling the day-to-day functions of the school district from a business office standpoint. To Greg's point, yeah, it was a 180 as soon as the closure occurred. As an office, we had to scramble to figure out what capabilities we could do working remotely. I think through that, we just discovered there's a lot of functionality that we can do offsite. If something like this ever rears its ugly head again. But it also showed some shortcomings as well. There's still some functions that we haven't been able to completely remove offsite. So eye-opening experience for us, obviously. But I think the one thing that stands out for me is we're doing weekly updates with the different groups of our business department, and everyone's had a great positive attitude throughout all of this. I think lately that there's been more talk of just wanting to get back into the office. It's so much more efficient to be in the office, much easier to do work in an office setting, and I completely agree with that, and I understand that. But from my standpoint, as difficult as that has been for our staff to make that adjustment, the reality is we're not behind in any area. We continue to get done what needs to get done. The staff across the district continues to get paid. Great effort by our payroll team and really the rest of our business team working collaboratively to make sure that happens. Processing refunds, we processed over $50,000 in refunds in spring activities that just did not occur. So a lot's going on behind the scenes. Definitely threw us for a loop, but again, the team stepped up and continues to do so. And in reality, as tough as it's been, from my standpoint, we haven't really missed a beat. So props to the business department team.
Thanks, Craig. Are there any questions or comments from the board? Craig, I appreciate your very calm demeanor, your very methodical demeanor. I also appreciate your sensitivity of wanting to have a conversation of payroll at some of our special board meetings so that you can alleviate fears and concerns of the staff. So again, another great hire. Thank you, Greg, for hiring Mr. Van Nuys a few years back. Appreciate your commitment to our district. Any other comments? Oh, back to you, Greg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Next person with adult ed, Jay was the first to restart us. He brought the conversation forward about the testing. He knew what the need was in our ability to go one-on-one or just a few over that, but has just kind of led the restarting from the district perspective, and his area has been managed extremely well, especially dealing on the adult side of this. So Jay, maybe a few comments. You're muted.
We good now? Thanks, Mr. Upham. Yeah, we saw firsthand our enrollment. We were literally rolling along beautifully. And as far as when we look at our enrollment this year compared to last year, at the end of February, last year we had just over 400 students, and this year we had over 600 students. And then in March, we made it up to 637. And we're holding there. We haven't enrolled any new students because of the testing room not being open to tape tests and get people started. And hand in hand with adult ed, we always look at our high set completers. And again, at the end of February last year, we had 43 that had passed their high set, and this February we were up to 59. So between 30 and 40% more this year than last year. And then March, April, and May, we generally double the number of high set completers just because students want to take part in our graduation ceremony. And we're holding right now at 69. We've had 69 completers through April, and we were on pace to be at about 120. So we do have the testing room open. We are doing high set testing exclusively, but we're not able to get as many students in there at a time, just because we're following the protocols that we need to for social distancing. But it's had an impact on our program. Big shout out to my teachers. They've really connected with their students. And as you know, our adult students are dealing with much more than just their own education, whether it's their employment, their own families, helping their children, daycare, and we're making things happen. Each month we send a report in to the state on how we're doing, and we get a little bit of feedback from them. And they did applaud us for our April report because our program did manage 420 hours of instruction in the month of April, which was neat considering we were doing everything online. And then as far as community education, we've gotten through giving people refunds for courses that they signed up to take that didn't complete or happen because of the pandemic, and we've done most of that. We are offering online classes for this summer, We've got all of our business classes that are online, and then we've got some medical classes for certificates, certified medical assistant, medical coding, transcription, phlebotomy. All of those can be done online, and our instructors are gearing up for online learning with those. Some creative teachers are doing golf online, fly fishing online, and sign language online using Zoom and then social distancing when they get together. We're revamping our website right now with the new offerings. So if people are interested in getting signed up, I would recommend you call at this point in time until we get our website up to date. But otherwise, we're itching to get more and more people involved as we can.
Thank you, Jay.
Thanks, Jay. Are there any message or questions or comments from the board on adult ed?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Jen.
Jana.
Jay, your numbers are very impressive considering everything, but a shout out to you for all your hard work and keeping those students learning, keeping them learning in spite of everything. Thank you.
And one other thing is our graduation was scheduled for May 13th. And of course, we couldn't pull that off, but we do have a graduation date of October 7th for anyone that completes their high set between, last May and up through October 7th. And we're looking forward to putting that on in October.
I'll be there.
Thanks, Jay. Anyone else? All right, Superintendent, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Our next area probably had maybe some of the most questions to be asked and answered with all the different employee groups. When to come back, how to come back, who should come back, who shouldn't come back, and still doing that. Just a revolving door of questions and answers. And Katie's just done a wonderful job and her staff. We are slowly bringing the district back up to speed. And Katie and her staff have done a nice job of informing the COVID requirements for employees and guests. We're working through facilities, and Scott will talk a little bit about that in a minute, on just making all of our areas, including our classrooms, starting on our classrooms, to be COVID friendly, if you will. So a lot of issues and questions with that. So Katie, maybe a few comments out of HR.
Sure. Thank you. My staff has been amazing, innovative through this whole thing. All of my staff have been working remotely up until last week before last. We started coming back with staggered shifts, so keeping in mind all of the 6-foot social distancing. But there's a lot of work that we do in HR that's hands-on. And so they've been in preparing our front office with signage, plexiglass, as we make plans to bring new hires in to do fingerprinting and new hire paperwork. We've done a lot to put some of these processes online so that we've moved from paper to electronic, which is a great thing. And I really credit my staff for getting that up and going. The benefits office is currently running open enrollment right now, completely online. And Jennifer Kennedy said it's going really well. So I'm super proud of all of them. We continue to work with employees that have COVID related issues, I guess. So we still have leaves coming in, not as big of a volume as we did before, but still trickling in people that have been exposed, needing to be put on leave and get the emergency paid sick leave. So just a lot of support that we're offering to all of the staff, and I couldn't be more proud of my staff through all of this.
Thanks, Katie. Are there questions from the board? Appreciate the work of you and your staff. It's you've been juggling the ever-changing recommendations coming down from national and the unknown trajectory of this disease, and appreciate the work that you and your staff are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks, Katie, and back to you, Greg.
Yeah, Madam Chair, our next person, Scott Ryder from Facilities, they've had an interesting journey, just from the standpoint that they've pretty much been in session from the beginning, or a portion of them. One of the key mitigating factors to the virus is disinfecting and cleaning, and our staff have done a nice job. Now what's really interesting is we are going to have to prepare COVID-friendly offices, COVID-friendly classrooms, a lot of that, and so that's going to fall to facilities. Funding source obviously would be the CARES Act, and that piece. But Scott, maybe touch base a little bit on your area.
Sure. Thanks, Superintendent Upham. First, I'd like to tell you a little bit about, we had something go on this week, or last week, I guess we found out. We had our Smart Schools challenge again for the Energy Challenge, and we have 2 champions from Billings Public Schools again, Orchard Elementary and Bench Elementary, and they just had a teleconference with the governor today and were awarded. So I suppose I don't know how they're going to do it, and typically they do it with I don't know, shoot, I can't think of the word, but they have a celebration at the school with all the students, and we're unable to do that. So it was interesting. Some of them were online, and it was nice to hear those. But okay, on to the COVID stuff. We have begun with the plexiglass installation on the schools. Lincoln Center was the first one completed, just because of all the different public and staff coming into the building at this time. The high schools and middle schools have all been measured, and the plexiglass is ordered for all those schools. And our glazer has been going out to the elementary schools now to measure and get those ordered. They're about a week and a half to 2 weeks out to get in, and they're a real nice setup for all the offices and different areas of the school that need them. We've been rounding up masks and sanitizer and gloves for staff in the schools, and so far we've been able to stay on top of that. We haven't had a whole lot of trouble locating anything other than disinfecting wipes. Those seem to be the hot commodity everywhere right now. We've had our custodial staff disinfecting the buildings right from the start. They did a thorough disinfection of all the buildings, and real thorough. And now they're starting their summer cleaning along with disinfecting the buildings as they're being used. So a certain portion of their day is spent doing that. The grounds staff has completed fertilizing and got a jump on some of the summer playground toy installs. With no students around, they've been able to get a couple of those in, and our facility staff has been able to catch up on a lot of work orders. We were a little behind on some of them, and they're making a good comeback on those. We meet weekly with the head custodians and go over different plans on how to support the schools, and any questions they have or any concerns they have or anything that's come up. We all work together on those and try to solve every problem we come across. And starting in another week or two, we'll be looking at how we're going to support the schools when they do resume, and what that's going to look like and what we can do to help everybody out. The warehouse staff has taken all deliveries when the schools were closed, and they've been delivering that product all this time too. And we even had one of our lunch drivers called in and was helping Sodexo with lunch deliveries. And I have updates on projects too, but I'll save that for later on in the agenda. So that's kind of what we've been up to.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott. Any questions? appreciate your commitment of your staff, handling things in the new world, and the challenges that are ahead, and you taking them on professionally and with great expertise, and appreciate that. Thanks, Scott.
Okay, Madam Chair, next is on our last one for tonight. And as I said, not next week, but the week after, when we adjourn the weekly Monday meetings, I'll have the academic team report out. So Sid from Sodexo, as I shared, they've done an outstanding job of making sure that there was food available immediately and increase the number of sites. So Sid, maybe a little journey through helping our kids with food.
Sure, thanks so much. Well, it has been a journey. I think I have to say the first morning after we got the call, I know, Superintendent Upham and I had a conversation, and I told him, well, we could probably get things coordinated in a couple of days. I came in that morning, and I have to give all the credit to my staff in the office and my operations manager, Elizabeth. She had it all coordinated and set up and ready to go. And I said, oh, I guess we're going today. So great job by everybody in my staff to do that and to get right away. And I was surprised to see how many actual meals we did serve that first day. So with that, I think, the credit goes to a lot of them. Since then, what we've had is we've kind of done an all expansive kind of everywhere we could possibly go within the community to reach out to families that are in need, to provide them with the much needed meals. And we've kind of been adding as we've been going. And as we're kind of rounding the end of the school year, now our focus is going to be on summer program and getting our summer program up and running. One of the areas with the summer program that we're going to have to be considerate of is that in the parks, it's non-congregating in the parks and the playgrounds. In the parks are not going to be open. So we made the decision to continue to serve in the school capacity that we're doing now, which will be Castle Rock, Medicine Crow, Lewis and Clark, and Riverside. All of those sites are going to be curbside service as they have been. And then we are still going to have the food truck that is going to be going out to the multiple sites that it's following the same schedule that they are today. And that is, you can see on our website, we're going to update the times, serving times with that. The only thing that we're going to be eliminating is the home deliveries. We aren't really seeing a huge amount of home deliveries, but they are there. But now with the summer program, we were hoping to kind of attract some of those, families that can come to those sites to get meals. With a couple other things, without being in the parks, that has kind of thrown a wrench in the works for Reading Rocks, which is the Education Foundation's wonderful program to get the kids with books and story time. Krista Hertz and her staff and we've worked together, and Krista put together this really cool way of doing Reading Rocks at our sites, at our 4 sites where curbside pickup. And then she's also going to have a couple of the food truck spots where kids can still come and get books. And then there's going to be a code on a bookmark where they can stream live and have different people read to them. So I got it. This is Krista's thing. I don't want to take all of her thunder from it, but I think it's really a cool thing. And whenever we can be serving meals and having kids come and getting books, it's a win-win for all of us. So I'm so happy to hear that that's happening. Other than that, that's about it for us. And then what we're starting to work on now is we're starting to begin to look at what's it going to look like to open schools. And I have currently, we're doing a schools open as regular, a modified service, a strictly service, or whatever we are facing in July as far as starting up again. We will be ready with a plan to make sure that we're able to get the kids the food safely and in any capacity that we open. So that's the report from my department. And thanks so much.
Thanks, Sid. Questions or comments from the board? It's clear that you have a real heart for kids, and supporting the kids. You can hear that as you share your experiences with us. And I want to thank all of the administrators that we've had with us today. You know, we have a great team of professionals that are working at School District 2, and we're working for kids and for our community. So thank you to all of you. Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Executive Directors. Outstanding work through this whole COVID journey. I've just been extremely pleased and humbled by your work and your team and your people. So nice work. Madam Chair, I want to talk about the levy. There is normal life out there. And so a quick recap on the elementary levy. It was moved by the county election officer when we went into lockdown. And the reason why it was moved was because of the concern for the safety of the volunteers that come in and work. A lot of the volunteers that work with the election process are considered to be in the high risk area. So the levy was moved from a May 5th deadline election date to July 7th. And so as a quick refresher, the elementary levy unofficially, and I'll speak to why I'm saying that unofficially, is set for a July 7th election date, official election date, with mail out or mail in ballots to the homes on June 17th. That's the goal of it. The amount of the levy, reminder for everyone, refresher for everyone, is 1.6 million. That's what we'll be asking for on the elementary only. There is no high school levy at this time. We were successful last year. The areas of the levy that were earmarked on the high school side were the career coaches for the career advancement, placement, and career pathway work, and then also the updating of instructional materials attached to the high school, which fortuitously has been used extensively with updated in the social studies and some of the other content areas. Without that, we wouldn't have been able to reach out to the high schools like we have just in this past bit of time with the virus. So the levy itself is set 1.6 million. So when we start talking about the amounts on a $100,000 home monthly, it's 82 cents a month for an annual cost of $9.79 on 100,000 taxable value. 200,000 taxable value, it's $1.63 per month for an annual of $19.58. And that's the cost. And I want to remind everyone, with the elementary levy, when we do pass them, we pass them in perpetuity. And the question would be, if we are successful with the levy, would it mitigate our deficit? The answer is no. If you remember, prior to the closure, that my office had authorized $4.3 million in reductions, about $900,000 in the 1920, the existing school year that we are in now, and then an additional $3+ million next year. Those reductions are still in place. One of the questions that's been asked of me, and tomorrow I will start the conversations with individual schools. I have them scheduled in the next 2 weeks about the levy to speak with via Zoom, speak with our teachers and take any questions, is with the levy moving forward and the amount that we're dealing with. I lost my train of thought, so too much virus for me, I guess. So with the levy moving forward, we will look to start that this week, start the conversation, and hopefully we're successful and moving forward. So questions on the levy?
Questions from the board on the levy?
Madam Chair,
Ms. Hafer.
Greg, do you have a community partner to champion this?
Yeah, I reached out to Judy's husband, Mike Nelson, at the Northern, and he's agreed to be supportive of this and help us out. And so, yes, we'll be doing some of the same recipe that we've done in the past. And then I've talked to a couple other community members that I haven't been able to commit that, have that commitment yet, but I assume we'll have that. So yes, we do.
Thank you.
Other questions for Greg?
Madam Chair.
Yeah, sounds like Mike Leo.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Thanks, Greg. I just wanted to clarify again. So, on $100,000 of tax assessed value, that's 82 cents. I think you said $9.82 a year.
Yeah, it's 82 cents a month, and it's $9.79 annually per year.
Okay, so not 979, $9.79 per year.
$9.79 per year, 82 cents per month.
Okay, on every $100,000 of assessed value.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike, for that clarity. Any other comments? Greg, you had talked about earlier that we were going to need to work with the county to put this on the ballot. The board needs to take action on that. When do we need to do that, and how will that be managed?
Thank you for that reminder, Madam Chair. Yes, the county election officer reached out to us, Craig and I, and informed us that statute 20-20-108, which is the governor's declaration of emergency, and I'm working with our legal counsel now, has to be lifted for us in order for us or the trustees to set the official date. This is unprecedented waters because as I read the 20-20-108, built primarily for a different kind of disaster, a fire, flood, those types of things that would be lifted fairly quickly. With the COVID piece, it's different. I'm not concerned about it. We have some legalities that we're going to have to work through. But the trustees, and we have been in conversations with the county attorney's office of Yellowstone County. They agree that we have to work with the governor's office to have some type of stay for us to set that election officially. Jeff, would you maybe want to add anything to that?
Yeah, it is, as Greg mentioned, a lot of what we're looking at in the law really causes us to scratch our heads because we've never really gone through any of this before. So what the statute says is that if the governor declares a state of emergency, then the election can be canceled by the county superintendent, which we looked at earlier when we had to provide notice to the board that it had been canceled by the county. And then the statute said as soon as convenient after the declaration of a state of emergency or disaster is terminated, then the trustees set a new date for the election. Of course, it hasn't been lifted or terminated, so that thing has to occur, that condition has to occur before we can actually set it. So you're not the only school district that has this issue right now. So stand by.
Madam Chair, also a quick reminder, which just kind of fleeted there for a second, was as I begin my conversations with our community and the district, I mentioned it today in my Facebook Live. There have been some questions, will the CARES Act funding, federal stimulus funding, replace the deficit? The answer is no. The CARES Act, which has been awarded to the state of Montana, and then our allocation in SD2 is $3.2 million. Now, that being said, there's been a little bit of a change in the allocation of a portion of that to private schools within our district. The initial amount showed us to be about $100,000. And as new information has come forward, we don't know what that official amount will be. We anticipate, and I say this, just anticipate that it'll probably double and maybe upwards of 250,000 of the 3.2 million. It looks to me like, or looks to Craig and I, like that's about where it may be, but we won't have that defined until the county county directs us as to that amount of funds that will have to be distributed to the private entity. That being said, the COVID money, or the CARES Act, if you will, does not allow to backfill deficits. It also has a sunset date on it of September of 21, which I've mentioned previously. And so can the CARES Act backfill the elementary deficit? The answer is no. Okay, why? Well, it's one-time only money from federal stimulus. It is to be used in specific areas, which is exactly what we're using it now, why we're using it, in the areas we're using it: cleaning, instructional materials, online supports for students, summer opportunities for students demonstrating gaps. It's all designed for the issue that the COVID virus has brought forward or impacted school districts. The levy, once it's passed, is passed in perpetuity. And so that's the important part for us in our district with the deficit that we have at this point in time. It is extremely critical and important, essential that we're successful in passing. Also, with that being said, I'm happy to announce that, you know, the districts that were able to run their levies in our sister districts, Great Falls was successful in passing their elementary levy, which I think says a lot, especially in the climate that we're in. I'm very proud of Great Falls, and then also Bozeman and Helena have been successful. I haven't been informed of others, so appreciative of that. Very respectful of where we are in our community, very respectful of the challenges that families and our businesses are seeing with this. So I want to recognize that. But moving forward, I'm excited, really excited about it. I think just the outpouring of support for our teachers and the work and the job that our schools have done, support staff and administrators, I think have really reached out and touched a lot of people in our community. And so I'm excited to walk this out and have a robust campaign and move forward. So, questions?
Any questions of the board for Superintendent Upham?
I don't know if it's a question, but it's a comment.
Jump in there, Russ.
I think it's important for the public to know and for us to, continue discussing that, in my view, and you can certainly speak to the Superintendent Upham, that we have about like a three-pronged approach to not only getting out of the deficit, but continuing to provide the services that we need to provide. The one is by reducing costs as much as possible. Two is by helping to change the funding formula in the state. And three is by passing levies. And I think it's important for our constituents to know we're not asking for property taxes to fully fund the district. That is never the plan. That is not the intention of the state. It's not the intention of our district. It is asking for some support and some assistance. But that funding formula we've discussed so often, that is what will drive the real changes. But with the support of our constituents in Billings, this is going to help us move so much further forward to continue to support kids in their education and learning.
Well stated, Trustee Hall. Appreciate that, and a great reminder for us all. So thank you. Excellent. Excellent.
Thanks, Russ. Anyone else? Okay, Superintendent, is that the conclusion of your report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. That's the conclusion of my report.
All right, thank you. That moves us on to planning board operations. And Krista Hertz, the Executive Director of the Education Foundation, sent a following email to staff, which you probably saw. I wanted to highlight it this evening just so that we make sure that we are aware of it and can share it out with our community. Sid Taylor did a great job talking about the Reading Rocks program. We usually have Krista come before us to talk a little bit about Reading Rocks in the spring. And this letter, I think, will serve that purpose. He shared with you how the volunteer experience is going to happen. Krista is still in need of volunteers, but she is also in need of hand wipes. So if there's anybody that has any hand wipes that they're willing to donate, you can certainly drop them off at the Lincoln Center. And so with that, I will move us on to the next agenda item, which is planning and development. Jana Hafer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first item on this list is the proposed downtown TIF district, and I have a question for our clerk because we were not going to bring this forward unless we received the information that we were lacking. Have you received anything from Mr. Fagg?
Not at this point, I have not.
Okay, and there was an article in the paper today that didn't indicate that he had received his report, so I think we should just move this to next month's planning and development. So we want to even discuss it right now. So that would take us to the Metra discussions. And Superintendent Upham, do you have a report for us?
I do. Thank you, Trustee Hafer. I was able to participate with the county's planning architect for looking to the future of the Metra space, and that was able to share with the planning architect the school district's set of criteria that we have presented to the Metra board as far as partnering with them with a sports facility, would be a football field, a track, a soccer field, possibly a cross-country area, and then additional green space, flat space for other activities. We listed the requirements that we were looking for, at least a 6,000 seat stadium, and I know Mr. Wall is on, and then a 10-lane track that would invite state track meets, not to mention out of town track meets, a fine soccer facility, and then potentially a cross country facility. And so I believe that there is interest in that, Trustee Hafer. And I spent about 45 minutes with their planner in detail talking about the number of events that we would propose. And I believe, if I'm correct, Mark, we could propose about 60 events at the Metra, and that was on the conservative side. That did not include any events from Rocky or MSUB. I'm not speaking for those two institutions, but I know they had expressed interest early in some of that. I think MSUB was talking about their own track too, but just our district alone, we proposed 60 events from a fall activity season and then also a spring activity season. And so we feel that this would be an excellent partnership. Now, just restating and reviewing the rationale from the bond, pre-bond project work, the facility review that was done, it just seemed to be smarter, if you will, to partner in different entities so that we could have an updated facility, share costs, drive more revenue possibly for the Metra, and then at the same time allow us to expand the footprint of senior high school, which then would allow us in a high school bond to increase, career pathway offerings, take care of the parking, take care of a lot of issues that allowing a partnership with the Metra and the school district could be extremely beneficial on both parts. So that conversation is still active, Trustee Hafer, and we're just walking through the process.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions of Superintendent Upham on this item?
Jana, this is Greta.
Yes,
what is the
Greta.
timeline? What is the timeline for the Metro Park development?
They have secured the demolition of the grandstands that's supposed to occur this spring, early summer now, and then from there I don't know. Initially, it was a 2021 discussion. 2021, as Trustee Hafer has mentioned a couple times, is not very far away. So with the virus piece, it may extend it out, but I do not have any definitive timeline, Madam Chair. I do not have a definitive timeline.
Any other questions for our superintendent? Thank you, Greg, and keep us posted on your next developments with them. Thank you. The next item is the Castle Rock easement. And what I recall from planning and development is that it was in the hands of our legal team. Scott, do you have any updates on that?
Well, I wasn't sure if it was going to be finished, reviewed in time for the meeting, and,
Right.
and I got to apologize. I just realized this morning that the attachments aren't on the agenda either. So I can tell you a little bit about what it's about, and then maybe Mr. Weldon could fill in some more. This is a request from VisionNet. It's a telecommunications company to provide internet, and what they're doing is looping the entire city It's similar to the water lines in the city, where if they have a problem somewhere, they can shut it off and send it around the other way, and it keeps people in service. What they have asked is there's a little strip of land to the west of Castle Rock, right across the street from of Governor's Boulevard. It's like 4 building sites is what it is. It's vacant land right now, but they've requested an easement to cross the 120 feet to go over to another easement they have back behind and loop the city around, rather than going through the city streets and making that connection over to Senators. So they've sent a proposed easement that legal has reviewed, and a diagram showing that. If you all need it for reference, I could email it to you now if it's appropriate. I'm not sure if it is, but I'll let Jeff talk first.
Yeah, we had a chance to review it. That same section of ground actually has 2 other utilities going through. And Scott, without digging for the email, I can't remember what other utilities. So this is ground that has already been dedicated, so to speak, for utility easements. So I don't know that it would affect the district's operation at all that way. It is vacant ground. It doesn't seem to be suitable for any school site or anything related to school site, because it's a fairly narrow, long strip of land across the street from Castle Rock, as Scott mentioned. There was some question earlier about the consideration paid to the district for that easement. Scott checked. It's that company's policy not to offer more than a nominal amount of dollar. I understand that the city and the county also have provided such easements for really no value to the city, the county. I suppose it's really in the larger context of the value to the entire community to have such an easement as Scott described. So I think the form of the easement looked fine. There was a typo referencing Lewis and Clark County. Otherwise, I think it looked fine by me. It doesn't appear to be in any way against the school district's interest to have that easement granted across that ground.
Okay, thank you. And Scott, don't we have a timeline for this decision?
That's correct, and they need to make a decision. They can't wait any longer for this easement. If we don't grant the easement, they will pursue going through the street and going that way. It's a much more difficult route, but they're at the point now that they can't wait a whole lot longer for that. The easement that the other utilities that Jeff had mentioned are, there's 2 other telecommunications lines running through that property. His proposal, or not his proposal, VisionNet's proposal was to go between those 2 lines and not take up any other space. That's where they're at right now, but they're at a spot where they've worked around the city everywhere else. This is their tie-in that they need to make now.
Okay, so I guess my question is for Mr. Van Ice. Since we did not have an action item on this, can we address this easement issue tonight?
Jana, if I may, we
Yes.
have a special board meeting scheduled for next Monday. If June 1st would not be too late, Scott, or I guess it's in 2 weeks, in June 1st, can we put it on the June 1st special board meeting agenda? And, perhaps we could ask for consensus this evening, but it was presented for information only, so I don't think that we can take a vote on this item.
Scott, is June 1st within their time frame?
I will have to inquire with them to see if that would work. If there's no other meetings in between, then I'll find out and put it on appropriately if it will work.
And you could let us know if there is an issue. We could always call a special board meeting just for that purpose and just have a real quick. Jana, may I suggest that we poll the trustees as to what their thoughts are, because that may be something positive or negative going forward.
Okay. Trustees, can I hear from you? What are your thoughts? Joe?
if this has already been vetted by the county and the city and their lawyers and our wonderful lawyers, and we don't have a really strong reason not to do this, and I would think Scott would tell us if there was one. It seems like this is a good neighbor kind of a situation. Is that your assessment, Jana?
I think so, especially since there are already other utilities in that area.
Seems kind of straightforward to me, but we do need to get it on a calendar or on an agenda, and we can't make Wednesday's meeting because we're past the 48 hours before, right?
I believe so. Any other trustees?
I just second what Joe said.
Okay.
We've talked about
Thank
this
you.
before. It makes sense to move forward.
Thank you, Russ. Does anyone have any objection? Okay, well, why don't we move this forward? We will put it on the June 1st agenda, provided that is not too late for this decision to be made. Scott, could you let us know on that?
I will.
Okay, all right, we'll move forward with the June 1st decision. The next item on the agenda is the solar update. Scott, what do you have for us on that?
The solar update hasn't changed much. They're still scheduled to start or resume at West High to finish that project on May 25th. And we have the Castle Rock grant in for review, and hopefully we'll hear back from that around September.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions on that item? All right, and then the last item is the Downtown Billings Partnership. I attended the meeting last month. They did approve the 4 attached grant applications. The only property that these would apply would be the Lincoln Center. So we will be looking at them to see if that's something that we could take advantage of. But these are attached for your information. Any questions on those? Okay, that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jana. And then that moves us on to curriculum and instruction, and we have a high school textbook review and selection. And I will pass that over to Chris Olszewski.
Madam Chair, members of the board, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So on behalf of our the textbook preview committees, actually tonight I'm bringing forward the first 4. We have had 7 committees who came together, and some of them actually had started prior to the shutdown, and then others had they worked through the process online with online access codes and be able to have some resources in their hands when available. And so tonight we are bringing forward 4 of the 7. Next board meeting I'll bring for first read the next 3. But tonight we're bringing forward U.S. history, the American history, Reconstruction to the Present. It's a 2018 copyright by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Publishing Company. We're also bringing forward Algebra 2. It's called Into. That's not a typo. It's not meant to be Intro Algebra 2. It's Into Algebra 2, copyright 2020 by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, again, publishing company. Sports medicine, it's one of our elective courses, and they have selected Essentials of Athletic Injury Management, 2020 copyright by McGraw-Hill Education. And then our AP government courses, they'll be next year going to a full year course across the district, and they are selected American Government, Stories of a Nation for AP course 2019 by Bedford, Freeman, and Worth. And again, I know we talked about it a couple times over the last couple months because we do like to put, we are out for public review after this first reading. And because of the shutdown and the health concerns, we typically have the hard copy books available down here at the Lincoln Center or in the public library available, but we won't have that option. However, members of the public can contact me for the access codes in order to look at the books the same way the teachers looked at them over the last couple months. So we'll be posting some more information online. I'm going to work with Brandon to see if there's a location we can post like we've done over the shutdown for our technology. See if I can get a little button so that they can click onto that and get some further information, or they can contact me directly at the information that's listed here in the agenda item. So that's what I have tonight.
Other questions for Chris?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Russ.
So the funds, Chris, for purchasing these, is that from the bond that was passed recently regarding textbooks?
Last year's levy, yes. This was the last spring's high school levy that was passed.
Great, thanks.
Are there other questions? So Chris, I was doing some quick math. You would like to have this presented at the June 15th meeting, I'm assuming, to approve it, and that is not 30 days. So is that 30-day hard and fast? It's a few days short of that. Does it need to go on the July agenda?
Madam Chair, I'm not sure how hard and fast that policy, I guess, is it the spirit of the policy that we provided? I'm not sure. On your math, is it 28, 29 days that we're close? I'm just looking at the calendar myself. I guess the question would be is we've usually done it first read, second read. In the past, I do believe we have past practice that it's been close to 30 days, and I don't know, even with the elementary adoptions, and because the board meetings aren't exactly 30 days all the time, I guess I would be open to direction from you and Superintendent Upham how you'd like to progress. If we push it out to July, these larger adoptions like U.S. History and Algebra 2, because they're so big and they take some time for the companies to process, they won't be here on time. The three that I'm bringing forward in July for first read, they're much smaller electives, and I've been told by the companies that they would be available to process those quicker than the larger adoptions. So I'm open to whatever direction you guys are willing to go forward with.
Greg, why don't you and Jeff and Chris work together and we'll resolve it as quickly as possible. If it can be on the 15th, that's fine. If not, and we would have to have a meeting just for that purpose, we can do that as well. Does that sound okay to you?
We can take care of that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions of Mr. Olszewski? Dr. Olszewski? All right, seeing none, thanks, Chris. Appreciate the work that you're doing on that. And that will move us on then to the budget. And we do have a couple action items. And so, Craig, have there been any public comments that relate to the budget this evening?
No, Madam Chair, there are no comments related to the budget.
Okay. So the first item is the elementary district, and there's an anticipated enrollment increase. So the suggested action will be to approve submission of the elementary anticipated enrollment application to OPI. And with that, I will turn it over to you to explain.
Thanks, Madam Chair. So OPI gives for student enrollment increases, there's really 2 times of the year that the district can go after additional funding. In the spring, you can go after anticipated enrollment. That is predicting that you're going to have more than 40 students attending either your high school or your elementary district as of the fall count next year versus our student count this year. And then the other option is to do an unanticipated enrollment application in the fall, which accomplishes the same thing. It gets that extra funding. But based on talking to some of my counterparts across the state and reading about the law itself, in order for the district to secure the maximum funding for this increased number of students, it's advantageous to do that in the spring during the anticipated enrollment cycle. That allows the funding for those students to be available on July 1st, and it also, based on a few nuances in the law itself, allows for, again, more funding through the anticipated enrollment process than going after the fact in the unanticipated enrollment process. So for the elementary district here, for predicting what student enrollment is going to be during next October's fall count, I used a combination of our Cropper demographics report as well as just trend data. And with that, we can justify an increase in our elementary district of a total of about 90 students. In order to be eligible for the anticipated enrollment application, you have to have at least 40 students that you expect to have as an increase for next year. So we exceed that by 50 students. So the number you see on here in the agenda item, an increase of 50 students or A and B, is reflective of what we would be petitioning OPI for in terms of the funding. If they approve that, then in June we'll have another action item to adopt the resolution for that additional funding. And again, that would get layered into our general fund budget next year and be available to spend on July 1st. And as we've done in the past with these anticipated enrollment applications, once we receive that money, we'll set it aside until after the October enrollment count to make sure our estimates came to fruition before we would go spend any of that money. Because if we do come up short, we'll have to give some or all of it back.
Thank you, and board members, as we all know, we've done this before, so this is just really a standard operating procedure when we have the ability to apply for this because there's an increase in the projected enrollment. So are there any questions before I ask for a motion? I will ask for a motion to approve submission of the elementary anticipated enrollment application to OPI. Do I have a motion?
So
I'll
moved.
make that motion.
I heard two people.
I will second. Tanya can have me
All
the
right,
motion.
Tanya is making the motion and a second by Joe Raffiani. Is there any further discussion?
Greta,
Yes.
if we do not do this and our numbers increase, we don't get it. Is that correct?
So
Or we don't get it till the end. That's,
yeah, we would have to wait until the fall to submit an application for unanticipated enrollment. We did that this year for elementary. We did the application, I want to say, in October or November, had the cash in hand by December. But again, this allows us to have the funding up front available July 1, and because of some of the nuances in the laws, allows for increased funding doing it on the front end here versus on the back end.
right. Got it. Thank you.
And if you remember, this is something that we brought to the state legislature several years ago because we felt it was important for us to have the money when the students are walking in the door as opposed to getting the money a year at the end of the school year. So if there are no further questions, I will call for a roll call vote. Any other questions? All right, Jana Hafer,
Aye.
Jen Hoffman,
Aye.
Joe Raffiani,
Aye.
Michael Leo,
Aye.
Russ Hall,
Aye.
Scott McCullough,
Aye.
Tanya,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Van Nuys, and then that moves us over to a similar item for the high school, and I will send that back to you.
So same logic applies. This is just for the high school district. We're petitioning here for an increase of 39, which would mean between our Cropper projections and our trend analysis, we could justify a total student increase of 79 heading into next fall. So that's 79 less the 40 that we need to be eligible. So again, we could be petitioning for a total increase here of 39 on the high school side.
Are there any further questions of Craig on the high school application? All right, seeing none, the suggested action is to approve submission of the high school anticipated enrollment application to OPI. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
I heard Joe Raffiani.
I'll take Joe. Joe can get that. I'll second that.
All right, and Russ is the second. Is there any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Jana Hafer,
Aye.
Jen Hoffman,
Aye.
Joe Raffiani,
Aye.
Mike Leo,
Aye.
Russ Hall,
Aye.
Scott McCullough,
Aye.
Tanya Ludwig,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you. And then we will move on to the budget update. So again, Craig, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you again. So what I've attached here is an updated view of our annual outlook for the high school and elementary general funds. A couple items of note. So as we're comparing against what I call the 6+6 forecast, so this would have been when we initially put out this view back in December. What you see down in the bottom section of this sheet is a comparison versus that 6+6 forecast that was put out in January. So you can see those first couple months, just slight fluctuations. What sticks out here is March. And so I was trying to understand what was going on in March. Could some of this have been due to the closure? That was my first question of why we're seeing such favorability in expense versus the forecast. And then after doing some digging, what we realized is there's some additional considerations we're going to need to make as we put these forecasts together going forward. One of those is the number of paydays within the month. Anyone who's on an exempt employee who's salaried, they get paid the same amount per month regardless of the working days of the month. But our hourly staff, there are some months where there may be 20 working days in the month. Other months there may be 23, and those every day means tens of thousands of dollars in difference. So we came to discover that the month of March was a 20 workday month, which is the lowest we experience in any given year. And then April bumps up to a 23 workday month. So what you're seeing in March is the favorability for less work days than the forecast had anticipated. The forecast just wasn't that scientific. The software tool we use for these predictions had no inclination to account for number of working days in the month. So again, something we can adjust going forward. That's why you see that blip in March. In April, April was a 23 workday month for our hourly staff. And so in a typical year, what we would have seen here is a rebound in April expense, really offsetting the favorability we saw in March. But what's going on in here in April is we're really starting to see the effect of the shutdown. And some of those key areas that we're identifying some major savings the first would be our sub-teaching. So far in a month and a half, we're estimating the savings between both our districts is upwards of 6 figures already just in sub-teaching effort. That we just haven't had to incur that expense because there hasn't been as big of a need for sub-teaching in the school district. Some other areas would be our utilities expense. We're really working to nail down how big of an impact our utility savings is with these school buildings being shut down. It is difficult. We have different utility bills for every school building in the district, and each of those bills spans different time frames. So we're trying to cobble all that together. Sometimes we're realizing it's just potentially easier to look at those savings after the fact once all your bills have been paid. But again, we're starting to see some of these effects of the closure resulting in some favorability. So with all that, on the elementary general fund side, in that upper left corner, since January, we've been carrying an estimate for a deficit for the year of about $3.4 million, just based on the slight favorability we've seen for the months of January and February, as well as starting to see some savings from the closure in mid-March and beyond. I've now adjusted that deficit number down to close to an even $3 million, and that's anticipating the closure continuing to reap savings for the month of May and June. And so I think by this time next month, we'll have gotten through May. We'll have gotten through our triple payroll, which is another major expense. If you happen to look over in the May columns of the forecast, you can see May is about triple some of the other months before it. And that's simply due to the triple payroll that is paid out in the month of May. So once May actuals are finalized and we're sitting here at the June 15th meeting, I think we'll have, at that point, a very good understanding of where we're going to land at the end of the year for the general fund in both elementary and high school. So I'll open it up to any questions.
Craig, would you explain what you mean by the triple payroll that occurs in May?
Sure. It's interesting the way this works, but I'll use our teaching staff as the prime example. Our teachers' contract starts on July 1st of every year. They don't receive their first paycheck until September of that year. And so what happens at the end of the school year is there's a true up, and those teachers are paid because their annual salary can, and it depends on what they choose, they can either be paid in 9 or 10 installments. And so at the end of the year in May, to account for those 2 summer months from the prior summer, those are actually, those 2 months as well as the month of May are all paid out at the same time. So in May, you see 3 months worth of monthly payments for our teachers, and that all hits our general ledger at the same time. So that's why you see such a big spike in May. That's the effect of chewing all those teachers up for their effort for the whole year.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Van Ice? Looks like you've answered all of our questions. Thanks, Craig. And that was presented for information only. And that moves us to our next agenda item. Which is policy update. So this policy was brought before board operations, and this is the first reading of policy 7122. It's the multi-district expenditures. There was some suggested language modification and sent to legal to have them take a look at it. And so Craig, why don't I have you and Jeff, if you want to follow up, make comments about the modification in the language.
Can do, Madam Chair. I just want to point out we did have bond projects update.
Oh, I apologize. I was flipping between my screens and I missed that. So we'll let you hold on for a moment and I'll put Scott Ryder on the hot seat. Thanks, Scott.
Okay, I'll just do a quick rundown of our projects that we have going on this summer. Some of these are bond projects, some are hail repair projects, and some are some high school projects. I just have them all together right now. I'll start with the Cushing-Terrell projects. The greenhouses at Castle Rock, Lewis and Clark, and Riverside Middle Schools, they had some hail damage last year, and the materials are anticipated to arrive May 21st, and the contractor will be installing those. We have project at Burlington Elementary to complete the gym acoustics. All the mag holders, the fire door mag holders, all those projects have been completed at this time. We have a couple issues to take care of at a couple schools, and we'll get those finished up in the next month or two. West High Photovoltaics, they're continuing to hold right now until May 25th, and then they'll resume and finish that project. It should only be less than a week to complete that project. The Castle Rock Photovoltaic is in for review for the grant, and we'll hear more about that later this year. The intercom systems at Castle Rock and Will James are they're complete. They haven't gone through final inspection yet, but they are complete. The intercom systems at Bitterroot, Boulder, and Meadowlark and Burlington. The work is complete at Bitterroot. At Boulder, we're awaiting some documents to allow work to start. The same with Meadowlark, and Burlington's substantial completion date was July 1st, so they've begun on those. The intercom systems at Sandstone and Elementary, work is complete at Sandstone, and all the work except for the change order work at Rose Park is completed. The intercom system at Miles started on May 11th, and it's scheduled, the completion date is July 8th. I would suspect will be done long before then. The bleacher replacement at Senior High has started this week, and one side is out, and our painters are over painting back behind the wall right now that's exposed, and they've begun work to demo the other side. I think the completion date is August 1st, I believe, for those. Washington Elementary metal cladding and hail repairs. They're going to start on June 1st, and their substantial completion date is August 14th. cow wall hail replacement project for skylights at Skyview, and they're starting on June 1st. Eagle Cliffs is complete, and Castle Rock should be complete by the middle to end of June. Lewis and Clark should be completed the second week of June as well, and Highland is also scheduled to be installed the end of June. And then our roof replacement projects, Career Center, the submittals have been reviewed and they're ready to start. And they'll be starting shortly. West High project started on May 18th today. And they propose a 3 schedule for that building. Senior High, the materials are ready and the project will start the week of May 25th. Alkali Creek will start as soon as the West High project is completed. Lewis and Clark Middle School, the contracts are complete and they'll start in July. Lincoln Center contract should be executed today, and they'll begin shortly on that one as well. The next set of projects is through Con Air, and we have Burlington Building AC is 60% finished. Central Heights, they were starting today. Rose Park, they're starting June 15th. That's a chiller replacement. Broadwater, they finished on May 15th, and that was hail repair of the Thermax insulation on the rooftop. And Rimrock Learning Center, they were finished on May 15th, and the hail damage to vents and the ducting on the roof up there. Lewis and Clark had a chiller replacement. They're scheduled to start mid-July. They're just awaiting materials to arrive. The chiller was I don't know, back ordered, or I think it had to do with shipping that was holding that up. HFGCA is got Lewis and Clark dugouts, Washington dugouts, and Castle Rock dugouts. And Lewis and Clark and Washington have been poured, and the structure has started going up. Castle Rock, they're laying that out right now, and they're working on all 3 of them. With Sanderson Stewart, we have the Castle Rock Green Space, which is also attached to the agenda for review and information. They've started at that site as well, and been hauling in material and doing some great work on that spot, as well as the Castle Rock playground drainage. Those have both been ongoing. I should have pictures for the next board meeting of a lot of these projects so you can get a look at what's going on. A lot of these so far have been door magnets and whatnot in the school, and intercoms. It's kind of hard to show you a speaker, I guess, but I'll have some pictures on the next board meeting of those. We've had quite a few asphalt projects. They're about half completed. The crack seal has been completed. They're waiting for a little warmer temperatures to do the seal coats. And we have the AP Chemistry at Skyview scheduled to begin in June, and the Tech Ed revision over at West that will be following that. And that's about all the projects we have right now. I'm sure I've missed a couple of them, but any questions?
I appreciate it. You are very busy. We appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you very much for attaching the information up at Castle Rock Park. The Heights Task Force asks, I think, every meeting that we have what is happening up at Castle Rock Park. So I appreciate you attaching that, and hopefully there'll be some of their members that are watching that can use that at our upcoming meetings. So thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments for Mr. Ryder?
Greta?
Jana?
Scott, you had some people near the parking lot, I think, up at Castle Rock. Did you get their questions answered?
I did. I've had questions from a couple different people. One being the one you mentioned. Yes, the driveway going into the parking lot. I think they had some intentions of maybe expanding their own parking lot into that area. But that will need to be used to access our parking lot. And the other question I received had to do with the fireworks. And we were scheduled to meet out there tomorrow to review some options of how they could set off the fireworks for the 4th of July. And I was called today, and they were thankful and said they've secured an area at the Metro. They're going to set them off so it won't interfere with any of this either.
Great. Thank you for taking care of that.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Ryder? Okay, that then moves us on to policy. It's policy 7122, multi-district fund expenditures. The Board of Trustee authorizes the superintendent or the superintendent's designee to expend funds available in accordance with a multi-district agreement executed by the school district. The superintendent or designee shall notify the board when transactions, i.e. expenditures, transfers, reallocations, of funds available through a multi-district agreement reach the amount of $250,000 for a single transaction or reach the cumulative amount of $500,000 during a school fiscal year. The intent of this policy is to ensure that the superintendent keeps the Board of Trustees informed of substantial expenditures of resources from multi-district funds. The superintendent and district clerk are authorized to adopt and implement internal procedures to enact this policy. And that is the policy. It's a new policy that's brought before us, born out of the challenges that we found when money was transferred and we were not aware of it. So, questions or comments on this policy before we have a motion to accept the policy on first reading?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Leo.
Yeah, I had a question for Councilor Weldon. Jeff, is there anything in state code that defines the word notify?
There's, in this context, not that I'm aware of, there's lots of different places where notification or notify are referenced. Sometimes there's notification by mail, by other means. So, no, I don't think in this context there is, although I haven't looked.
Well, I'm just wondering if we might want to further define notification to be, written notification to each individual trustee. In other words, if someone could meet this threshold, and again, this is far in the future, but if they could meet this threshold by simply a phone call to the board chair or the trustee, that may not be sufficient in some future context.
Sure. I don't know that it would, well, one, I think it would be inadvisable for the superintendent to notify something like this by telephone just because we wouldn't necessarily have a written record of it. So you could certainly put in that sentence on line 9 there, the superintendent shall notify the board in writing or at a meeting or something of that nature. If that's the intent of the board, we could certainly insert that there. Shall notify the board in writing when transactions, so on and so forth. So that wouldn't be a difficult change.
Mr. Raffiani.
I'm right there with Trustee Leo and wanting to see this language tightened up so that the very specific intent is something that cannot be end run by anyone subsequently. My concern with simply asking for the difficulty, rather, I should say, with coming up with that language is if it's in writing at a board meeting, we probably had that in this instance because it was probably in a budget someplace that showed the money was moved from one fund to another. The budget was printed out for us and provided as an attachment to an agenda item, and we voted on it in a board meeting. It was in writing in a board meeting. So if we want to tighten it up, I'm not saying I have a good idea as to how to overcome these sorts of nuances, but if it can be done, someone's going to do it. So if we're trying to keep them from doing it again, we might want to, I don't know, keep working on that language.
Is the intent to have notification prior to the transaction? I'm just trying to think if there's, what sort of notification is the board actually seeking in this instance?
I think the kind that would keep us from having a systemic financial deficit that was being plugged with one-time money such that we subsequently found ourselves in the situation which we find ourselves now. It would be how I would characterize what we're trying to avoid with this language change.
Madam Chair?
Jana?
What about in a meeting orally, that that the superintendent would have to state in a meeting publicly that it was being transferred. Would that suffice?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Leo?
I appreciate the suggestion, Jana, and I especially appreciate that Mr. Raffiani, an attorney, is finally following the advice of a realtor. He would do well to do so in the future. I would suggest, however, that we do both, that we require that written notice be given to each individual trustee, and that the superintendent or designee have a separate agenda item on an open meeting where that would be stated. And Jeff, to answer your question, the intent is not for us to be informed in advance. It's just for us to be informed when we hit those thresholds.
Okay.
So Jeff, as far as a procedure, this is not an urgent vote that needs to be taken today. Would it be best to have your legal team take these concepts and draft changes to the current policy that we see in front of us?
So the way your board does it is you actually don't adopt or modify policies until 3 readings have occurred. So this is the first reading. The board has discussed it, given some direction. I think, Craig and I can take a look at it. And what I would imagine is we would come back then in second reading with requested or suggested modifications to further modifications, I guess. And then you would adopt those modifications on second reading and presumably then on third reading. So I don't think in the normal course of your policy review you would need to sidetrack it. I think you could simply direct the clerk and me to look at this and refine it and bring back suggested changes on second reading, which wouldn't happen until next month anyway, I would presume.
Second reading can occur at a committee meeting, but it doesn't have to. We have typically done second reading at a committee meeting, and then third reading must be done at a board meeting.
Okay.
That being said, suggested action would be to approve policy 7122, the multi-district fund expenditure, first reading, and return it to our attorney for modifications, legal modifications based on the suggestions at this board meeting. Does that work?
Sure.
All right. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Motion by Michael Leo, and is there a second?
Second.
A second by Joe Raffiani. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the roll call. Jana Hafer.
Aye.
Jen Hoffman.
Aye.
Joe Raffiani.
Aye.
Mike Leo.
Aye.
Russ Hall.
Aye.
Scott McCullough.
Aye.
Tanya Ludwig.
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And that takes us then on to, see if I skipped anybody else, to the MTSBA update. So the MTSBA Board of Directors met several weeks ago, and there were several issues that are raising concern for the state. We look to be projected with about a $300 million decrease in revenue this year. And with the revenue decline, there is concerns that education may be, that there may be less funding for education. And so the feeling of the MTSBA Board of Directors is that we would adopt a preservation of the previous progress so that we would not move backward, that we would go to save the funds that the advances that we've made in the past and keep them in place. There were other questions that were asked about anticipated taxes and the specific effect. There were discussions on the employee health issues, the FMLA, short-term disability. There were also conversations about what do you do with employees has there been consideration of employees that have a COVID-19 once the CARES Act has passed and they're compromised by the virus? And so there are a lot of moving parts. We have the other large discussion was not to have any in-person meetings until 2021, and so all board members would have received an invitation to register for the June 11th annual meeting. I know several of us have already done that. At that meeting, there'll be a discussion of some of the guiding principles that we're dealing with MTSBA, also a discussion of the legislative platform, what they have done. As we've been aware through our AA caucus meetings and all caucus meetings, that they've put together in sorts of mega platform. There is questions from the MTSBA board about specific issues that have arisen in districts across the state as a result of the COVID-19. And so there will be discussion on that as well. Glenn Tecker, who is an internationally known facilitator, MTSBA works with him annually as far as setting strategic planning, is going to be at that meeting. And so it won't be just simply the annual meeting for discussion of legislative issues, but it's also going to be a little bit more broad-based. The registration for the annual meeting closed on Friday, but they have extended it to the 20th. And so I would hope as many board members as are available on the 11th would be able to participate in that meeting. They do have a 1-hour orientation on 2 different days. I think it's the 28th and perhaps it's June 2nd, so that you can go through how they are going to be running the virtual meeting. There already is a quorum, so there are a fair number of people that have signed on to this and trying to work to how we will facilitate to get meaningful conversation and discussion in the process. There is no charge for the annual meeting this year. So with that, I would open it up for any questions from the board on any of the MTSBA issues. Well, that was easy. Okay, last item on the agenda is the consent agenda. It's used to conserve time. Consent agenda contains items of routine nature which normally do not require deliberation on the part of the board. The items will be accepted and approved in one action unless a board member wishes to have an item separated. That was not done. And so the suggested action is to approve and accept the items within the consent agenda without objection to recommended action. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And that was Joe Raffiani. And a second?
Second.
Second by Tanya Ludwig. Roll call vote. Jana Hafer.
Aye.
Jen Hoffman.
Aye.
Joe Raffiani.
Aye.
Michael Leo.
Aye.
Russ Hall.
Aye.
Scott McCullough.
Aye.
Tanya Ludwig. And the chair votes aye. Thank you, Tanya. And the chair votes aye. And that brings us to the adjournment of the meeting. And if there is no objection, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Greta,
Yes, dear.
do we have any communication from the public?
Oh, thank you so much. Sir Van Ice.
Yes.
Communication from the public. You know what? You guys are a great team. We have a great board.
Yeah.
Craig, do we have any communication from the public?
There is none tonight, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. So without objection, I will now adjourn the meeting. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Be safe and stay healthy. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.